Prof, when it comes to coalition building, of course, there was an interesting element, this time around with the amendments to the Political Parties Act to allow coalition political parties, perhaps, again, the issue of trust that we've talked about here all evening, again, coming into play. And that was, I think, another interesting aspect of, the 2022 election.
Yeah. The coalition political party, was brought in purely for two reasons. One is the political parties fund.
Yes.
We don't want to get into an election. Then you tell us that, but this is our vote. So now, for those who get into a coalition political party, the presidential vote is for the coalition. So you can then legally share it. I think that's the first thing. But the second thing was optics. That we want to go to my area and say, you are not an ex-candidate, you are our candidate because you're running on the political parties. I think that's the first thing. But I think the other thing that's important is the element of coalition building, the element of trust, and we will need to look at it both before and after. As you rightly say, as now the votes come in, both in terms of whether you are the majority or minority coalition, what positions you get in the assembly, what positions you get in the Senate, and how that is then related to what you have and how the coalitions hold on to. It's something that I think is going to be clear. But the last point for me that's important is since 2002, it is now clear that this country will always have coalitions. So it's important that political parties and players start thinking and building coalitions and building that trust much earlier and not just a week to elections.
Yeah, and in other jurisdictions, you see coalitions that are built on issues. For instance, you would see one political party joining a coalition because of one single issue, one. It could be, I think we were saying this last night, that maybe, they want to come in and have better pay for teachers. And so the coalition will say, look, we'll bring in this party. And they come in with that agenda, pass the legislation, make it happen. And then after that, the coalition can break up and people go their separate ways until the parties sort of pick, the next issue, particularly the minorities, that then add on the numbers to the coalition. Hopefully we'll get to that. Are we there yet, Koki, where you say that this party is bringing this one very specific issue to this coalition as opposed to just the regional numbers?
Unfortunately, we are not there yet. And you are right, like, for example, some coalitions come together to defend the environment, like the Greens. Others come together backed by unions and so on and so forth. But we started with the concept of trying to base political parties on ideology. But we have seen that political parties are now not based on ideologies, but voting blocks, mostly ethnicity or blocks, support blocks, and therefore, and even the debates. Coalition parties that come together based on ideology and also on issues tend to focus their agenda and their conversation when they are selling their agenda on the issues that have brought them together. If you look at what we've been discussing for the past few months or years, you will find that the disconnect we are talking about between the politicians, the leaders, and the citizens, because the citizens want issues like the high cost of living being discussed. They want issues like healthcare, universal healthcare. They want issues like climate change being discussed. They want issues like sustainable development and opportunities and so on and so forth, access to opportunities, gender equality, and all those issues. And in fact, you hear when commentators and people outside, they are discussing issues. But the politicians, when they go to campaign, they are discussing personalities and themselves, and they are focusing on irrelevant issues that are not, of interest to Mwananchi. So it is important, as we move forward, we can hope that during the transition period from our constitution of 2010 and the first election now, as we move by the 15th election, we hope that we can transition to political parties based on ideology, and that are public institutions of governance and democracy.